Morning, everyone. My name is Tom. I work with Trivago in Düsseldorf. Today I will talk about the challenges of a new engineering manager. Why do I talk about this? For one, because I went through those challenges myself. I switched from a developer position to a management position at Trivago, and I also coached some of my colleagues through those challenges. And I think it's very helpful. So this is me with the monkey on my back. Max, falls du jetzt zuschaust auf YouTube später, ich hab dich lieb. Sorry, just had to do that. I've been with Trivago since 2013. Originally I came to Trivago because in my previous job I didn't get to code as much anymore. Well, at Trivago as an engineering manager was the same thing, but this time it was actually okay because I liked what I was doing instead. So management. If you had asked me 4 years ago if I would ever consider myself a manager, I would have laughed at you. I would have said you're crazy. Yeah, right, management. Because to me, management was something like this. People in suits and ties handing around fancy reports, smiling at each other, how good they are at management, keeping the engineers from doing the actual work, being a burden on them, being a pain in the ass in a way. So my image of management was not very good. And I think it's not surprising that this was the case because there are a lot of bad examples out there. Yeah, I mean, in movies or in comics, and of course they are fictional, but they are funny because it's true to a degree, right? It has a core of truth to it. There are many bad examples of management out there. Or there is also what you see in the media. This large-scale management, thousands of people, thousands of employees, managers who lose track what's actually happening in their organizations, and that's certainly not where I wanted to go. But when I became a manager myself, I realized that management starts small. This is a team of 6 people, and even on a team of 3 people, you can have value added by management. You realize somebody needs training, you get the other person to mentor this person, so you've managed, you provided value through management. And it's kind of invisible. You don't typically think of that as management, but it is management and it does provide value. There are studies that show that management provides value, and one of the more notable ones comes from Google. Now, if you know Google, they are not a management savvy organization. They are an organization of engineers originally. They value engineering much higher than they value management. And they did this study called Project Oxygen a couple of years ago, which wanted to find out what distinguishes excellent teams from average teams. And actually, they set out to prove that the manager didn't have a part in it. So, unfortunately, however, one of the revelations which Google discovered was that the biggest controllable factor in high-performing teams was the quality of the manager and how they sort of made things happen. So they ended up proving the exact opposite of what they wanted to prove. And if even Google comes to that conclusion, I think that some things has to be to it. So if you arrive at this conclusion that you can provide value through management, the question is, who do you make a manager in your organization? So you want to pick the right people. And in a team of engineers, there's this intuition, okay, I have to make somebody a manager out of this team. Who do I pick? And the the natural instinct or reflex goes in the direction of the best engineer. Yeah, the best engineer should become the manager. They've deserved it. They've worked hard. So the best engineer is the most obvious candidate for management. But maybe this is not always the best thing to do. The question is, which other criteria could there be for management? The problem with this promotion thinking, yeah, the best engineer deserves the promotion to management, is that management is not actually a promotion, it's a career change. There's this great blog post by Lindsay Homewood. The skills and the proficiency that you need to be a good manager is vastly different from what you need to excel as an engineer. It's different types of problems you face. It's different kinds of challenges. Different communication becomes a lot more important, and it's a different way of working. This is why it's not always the best idea to make the best engineer the manager. And because the jobs are very different, the transition from engineer to manager can be pretty tough. And in the following, I have picked 3 challenges that I think are typical for the engineer to management transition. And I will start with productivity and focus. As an engineer, you have a pretty clear picture of your productivity. At the end of the day, you know if the day was a productive one or not. You have number of commits, you have completed tasks, you have shipped features, you have number of closed bugs, you have test coverage. All these metrics are gathered for you automatically, and all these metrics are pretty short term. Yeah, you can see what you've been doing usually a couple of minutes later, or maybe a couple of hours. But normally you don't have to wait a long time to see these metrics. As a manager, all of this goes away. As a manager, I did not ship a lot of code. I did not commit a lot of code anymore. I did not contribute features. I did not close bugs. Instead, my typical week would look a bit like this. You know, as an engineer, you need large chunks of uninterrupted time so that you can do focus work, that you can immerse yourself into a problem, that you can think deeply. If you look at this calendar, the most free chunks of time is like 90 minutes or so. So I challenge you to get a lot done in 90 minutes, to do a lot of deep thinking. And I didn't even pick a particularly bad week. This was kind of a normal week at that time. So a typical day might look like this: 8:30 in the morning, start with email, making appointments, check if people signed up for the workshops. 9:30 to 10, discuss with some devs on a merge request. 10 to 10:15, discussion with a product owner on priorities. 10:15 to 10:30, stand-ups. 10:30 to 11, one-on-one meeting with a product owner. 11 to 1, small stuff like booking rooms, communication on some downtime, review a blog post draft, investigate for equipment, update documentation, approve vacation requests, things like that. 1 to 2, meeting on the new workflow. 2 to 3, meeting on replacing our package management server. 3 to 4:30, review results of the company survey, summarize a peer review for an employee. And 4:30 to 5, one-on-one meeting with a developer. At the end of such a day, sometimes you wonder, what have I been doing all day? So lines of code committed 0, features shipped 0, bugs fixed also 0. So the old metrics of productivity go away completely as a manager. So you have to find new metrics, because what you do is actually real work and provides value. For example, you give actionable feedback to somebody. so that their performance can improve over time. You help somebody with a role change because they're unhappy in their team. You encourage somebody who is stuck on a project, or you provide training to people so their performance becomes better. And what these things have in common is that you don't see the result of these actions right away. It's you talk to somebody, you give somebody feedback, but you cannot look inside their head. You don't know if it clicked or if you will have to repeat it again next week. So all these things, and generally most of the things you do as a manager, are about the long term. For example, this example of a role change. I've had an employee once who was performing great, was one of the top performers on his team, but he wanted to switch teams. He wanted to switch roles because he was a bit bored, or having been doing the same thing for a long time. But because he was so good in this team, in this position where he was, there were also people who wanted to keep him there because he was doing great work. So I had to talk to them, I had to talk to him over and over again, get them in the same room, and it went over weeks and months in the end. So of course it felt terrible in between, having the same conversations over and over again. You feel like you're making them wait for no reason, and you don't feel productive. But in the end, it worked out. After a couple of months, actually, and that was very valuable as a result. So these individual conversations all the time had some value in the end, and it just wasn't visible after the conversation because you were repeating yourself over and over again. But then I established trust with this employee because I supported him in this cause. We retained him, so it was great for employee retention, one of the top performers, and I could contribute to his growth in the organization. This is an example of the DRY principle for managers, which is do repeat yourself. Communication is a large part of your job, and when a lot of people come together in a busy organization, communication always means repeating yourself, repeat. And as an engineer, also this feels unproductive and stupid because as an engineer, you were trained not to repeat yourself, and you have to rethink that. So how did I redefine my productivity? Today, I feel productive when I can connect two people. I hear one person has a problem. I know somebody else can provide the solution, but they don't know each other yet, so I can connect them. I feel productive when I learn something about something new about a colleague because it will increase our trust and enable us to work better together in the future. I feel productive when I can help somebody with bureaucracy because of my position as a manager. I know some shortcuts in the organization, so I might be able to unblock somebody so they can get to their goals faster. I feel productive when I teach somebody something. I feel productive when I can bounce ideas back and forth with an employee, or also when I can get somebody equipment they need, which is also, again, a form of unblocking somebody. And these 6 examples, maybe you've realized they're all not about me. It's always somebody else is involved. And I think this is the essence of what you have to, how you have to think about productivity as a manager. I think Andy Grove said it best. A manager's output is the output of his organization plus the output of the neighboring organizations under his influence. So if you take this to heart, if you internalize this, and if you switch your thinking that way, then I think you will be happy with your productivity as a manager. It's not about how many commits you churn out every day, not about how many bugs you fix, but how well you enable others to increase their output. This is how I think you should think about productivity. The next challenge as a manager is overcoming what I call the "who am I to" syndrome. So you're promoted, no, you switch to management, and all of a sudden you're asked for vacation approvals, or somebody asks you, "May I work from home on Friday?" And especially when you make the switch from in the same organization, yeah, your former peers, you think you're still one of them. Why? Who am I to decide this? It doesn't feel right. So while yesterday you were just another introvert developer, and if you didn't feel like talking to people, you could hide behind your screen and work on a problem each day. Today you are on stage. Congratulations. People will look at you differently just because of your role. Yeah, maybe you don't realize this at first, but people observe you a little bit differently. People watch you more intensely, more closely. Did you ask for this? No, probably not. I certainly didn't. Most developers I know don't enjoy being the center of attention. I also don't. But it comes with the role. Yeah, you have to make it work somehow for you. Hiding is not an option anymore. As I said, as an engineer, sometimes you can spend your entire day at your screen working at something and not being interrupted. As a manager, it doesn't work that way anymore. People will come to you. People rely on you. They turn to you to solve certain problems. They come to you with questions and they want advice. You have to listen to complaints. People come to you with when they're unhappy, and you have to decide: can I take care of this right now? Is it a problem I can or should solve? You will have to give critical feedback, because if you don't do it, probably nobody else will. You have to negotiate with other parties, like other teams, stakeholders, or management, and you will have to resolve conflicts and issues, and some of these conflicts will feel like kindergarten to you. And some of these situations will make you feel awkward. You might wonder, am I the right person to deal with this? I don't feel prepared for this. I'm not the most knowledgeable person for this. Some of my former peers know at least as well about this issue as I do. So this is again the "who am I to" syndrome. Who am I to deal with this situation? I'm not the best person to do this. And feeling awkward sucks, right? It's not a nice feeling. But also in this transition from engineering to management, I think awkwardness is actually a good thing, because it shows that you want to do a good job and you are aware that you're not quite there yet. You have to learn new things. There's a great blog post by Ridge Armstrong of Fog Creek Software called "Be a Manager," and I love the subtitle. The only reason there's so many awful managers is that good people like you refuse to do the job, and I think this is beautiful, and I think it's very true. And he concludes with: start learning to be a manager and be uncomfortable about it. You cannot learn these things from a book. There are difficult situations where you don't feel comfortable, awkward situations which you have to live through. And it's all right, because everybody screws up as a first-time manager. There's just nothing that really prepares you for it. There are no books you can. There are, of course, books, but they won't give you the mindset of the experience of really living through these situations. So ultimately, of course, you want to overcome this awkwardness, because it's not a nice state to be in. So what do you do? First of all, my recommendation would be just to go with it. Yeah, you will face unfamiliar situations for the first time. For example, I hated running meetings. I absolutely hated it. Everybody looking at me, expecting me to say something intelligent. And over time, yeah, it became better. So if you go with it, you might play a role at first in certain situations. You don't feel comfortable, so you play a role. You imitate people who you think are doing it good, doing it well, and over time you find your own style. You have to find your own management style. Nobody else can do it for you, that's for sure. If you copy others, you will always seem fake to a degree. So you have to find your own management style, and you have to allow some time for it to happen. It won't happen overnight. Second, if you can, get a mentor. This is really, really useful. If you have somebody to talk about difficult situations, who you can go to and get some advice. Even 1 hour a week or even every 2 weeks is a lot. Yeah, somebody who knows this management experience is really helpful. If you cannot find a mentor, maybe you can do peer coaching. Maybe you know somebody in the organization who is going through a similar transition, and exchanging thoughts and ideas and talking about problematic cases is pretty helpful. And at some point, you will come to a new self-understanding. You have to. It's a switch in mindset. Mindset is a set of beliefs or a way of thinking that determines one's behavior, outlook, and mental attitude. And this is your goal. When you switch to management, you need a new mindset. And at some point, you won't feel awkward anymore, or a lot less so. So this was the second challenge, the who am I to syndrome. The third is that problems don't come to you. So you become a manager, and you want to be approachable, you want to do a good job, you want to be there for your team. So you tell everyone, if there's something wrong, please approach me. You can always approach me. I'll be there. I will listen. You can talk to me. And what happens? Suddenly, somebody comes up to you and says, I quit. This person was unhappy. This person was dissatisfied with the conditions on the team, in the company, whatever. And you wonder, how could this happen? I told everyone they could come talk to me, right? So why this sudden disaster? Why is somebody quitting? And I had no clue that they were unhappy. So I had an open door policy. I mean, I never had a door, but you know what I mean. And Ed Catmull of Pixar has a very interesting anecdote about open door policies. I'd assumed an open door would guarantee me a place in the loop, at least when it came to major sources of tension. Not a single production manager had dropped by to express frustration or make a suggestion in the 5 years we worked on Toy Story. Being on the lookout for problems was not the same as seeing problems. So the open door policy alone is not enough, even if you tell people that they can approach you at any time. It's not enough. But why is that? Why don't people come with problems? A common one is, I don't want to steal the boss's time. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's doing something with management, and he must be super busy because managers are always super busy. So I don't want to steal his time. I don't want to make a big fuss out of it. It's not that important. If I go talk to the manager, it seems like a super big deal. Let's not go there. Or I will wait for the right time. I could talk to them now, but there are so many people around, it will look like something huge. The problem with the right time, of course, is that the right time never comes usually. Please don't wait for the right time. Or also popular, probably it's me. If I try harder, it will be fine. So not really, there's really no need. Or also, doesn't the manager already know something's wrong? I mean, he must know, he cannot be blind. He must know, so he's probably okay with it and won't change anything anyway, so what's the point of talking about it? So all these reasons play together. It's rarely one alone, but they combine into something, and they are the reason problems don't come to you. So instead, you have to find the problems. Now, how do you do that? Walk around, ask everybody, do you have a problem? No. One thing you can do is smoke, because smokers always talk to other smokers from other teams, other departments, and they usually know a lot more about the organization than people who don't smoke. Unfortunately, I don't smoke. So what I did instead was have one-on-one meetings. At the beginning, I did not really believe in one-on-one meetings. I thought it was a bit of overkill to have dedicated meetings with each individual every week or every 2 weeks. But then I started them, and now I think they are absolutely necessary. I think they are the backbone of a good communication architecture in a department or an organization. The rules are simple: 1 + 1, 2 people behind a closed door, at least 30 minutes of time. Do it every week, every 2 weeks, every more weeks, but not too far apart. The agenda is set by the employee, so it's their time. Yeah, they can come with topics. They should come with topics, ideally. But if they don't have any topics, then usually I, as a manager, come with some questions or things to talk about. The topics can be pretty much anything. There are no hard and fast rules. You can talk about projects, but it shouldn't be just a status meeting. You can talk about their satisfaction or which problems they see in the company. You can talk about personal topics if both are fine with that. You can talk about problems in the organization, and you can talk about goals for the employee. So it's also about career growth. This URL down there links to a great list of questions, 101 questions. If you do one-on-ones, I can recommend checking it out. And one-on-ones are awesome. I think they're super important. They help you build trust and rapport with people. If you listen to people, if you give them your time is one of the most valuable things you have to give. So it will be rewarded by people with trust and respect. It's a great opportunity to exchange ideas because you're behind a closed door. It's a private, safe space. So there's no reason to save face. Nobody has to be afraid or anything. So you can bounce ideas back and forth. And this is actually a great way to bubble ideas up. If a junior engineer has a great idea, who does he talk to? Maybe he's a bit afraid of, doesn't know what will become of the idea. So talking to the manager then the idea already becomes more prominent and might find a new supporter. The same with feedback. It's a safe space behind a closed door. Nobody has to be afraid of losing face in front of other people and so on. So it's a great way to give feedback in both ways, actually. So from the employee to the manager and from the manager to the employee. And it's a good opportunity to talk about growth. Not every time, once in a while is enough. And talk about where the employee wants to go, talk about openings in different teams or something. All of that stuff is really valuable. So the problems don't come to you. You can find out by smoking or having one-on-ones. Wrapping up, I talked about 3 challenges of a new engineering manager. 1, old metrics of productivity go away. You have to find new ones as a manager. 2, overcome the who am I to syndrome. You have to have a switch in mindset, and it will take some time. You have to find your management style. And 3, problems don't come to you. Instead, go and find the problems. I also recommend to read a lot as a first-time manager. These are 3 books I could recommend. The Manager's Path by Camille Fournier. First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham and High Output Management by Andy Grove. They're all fairly short and to the point, especially the one on the left and on the right. They are really, really actionable and concise. Additionally, promotion number 1, I'm currently writing a guide for people who undergo the transition from engineer to manager. If you want to know more, check out my blog, tombartel.me. Promotion number 2, Trivago is a great place to work. What I love about it is its openness. Yeah, we have 50, 60 nationalities working at Trivago. We're open to ideas. We're open to you. I know all the hiring managers, so I can jump you to the front of the line. If you want to come talk to me later, I'll be happy to meet you. And I will take questions now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Judith. I'm the curator of the track IT Management, and I hope you're a self-organized audience, so I have to ask once, are there any questions?
Yes, hi, and thanks for the talk. I don't have a question. I have maybe an addition regarding the question, why won't people approach me with problems? I think one thing that I observed is also, I mean, as a line manager, you have certain legitimation to decide about salary raises, maybe job levels, promotions, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people just don't want to come always with problems, because then you might, as a manager, be biased to just see them as problem reporters, and that might be to their disadvantage. So, mm-hmm. I mean, everybody is talking about this failure culture and allow errors and everything, but I think that's really a problem when you have this mandate to do these decisions.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. I think also one-on-one meetings can help with that, because if you have one-on-one meetings regularly, then you can catch problems early on before they bubble into something big and which explodes at some point. Thanks.
Hi, thanks for the talk.
Hey.
At the beginning you said that before you got the manager you liked hiding behind your screen and you didn't like standing on a stage. Today you're doing this big talk in front of all of us.
Yeah, and I'm way out of my comfort zone. I mean, it was not like that every day. I didn't hide behind my screen every day, but there are those days where you don't want to deal with people. At least for me, that was the case. And it's a process. I mentioned I didn't like running meetings. I still don't particularly enjoy it, but it's become better over time for sure. And you learn to, as an engineer, you learn to express yourself concisely and briefly. And I always value that in people also. But as a manager, sometimes you have to, use a couple of more words and say the same thing in a couple of different ways, just to bridge time sometimes also in a meeting. And you learn that over time. And at first it feels a bit unusual and maybe fake, but it doesn't have to. And you have to allow for some time for those things to change. Does that answer the question?
Yes, mostly. Thanks.
Maybe I can add. One of my former bosses told me when I went for leading a team, say what you're gonna say it, and say it again. And this is what he always told me: say it, say what you're gonna say it, and say it again. And now it's your turn.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. It starts when you actually took the decision or was hired to become a manager, but what made you go through this transition to begin with?
You mean what motivated me to become a manager?
Because apparently you can see all the downsides of it to begin with, but somehow you still said, okay, I want to do this. Whether it was you, it was someone in the company that saw the potential. What happened before the presentation, before you actually took the jump?
Well, at first, I certainly didn't see all the downsides, that's for sure. We grew as a company, we became more and more engineers, and my manager had 50 direct reports at that time, so it was way too much. So he was looking for a couple of additional team leads. I think he saw some emerging people skills in me, and that's why he kind of chose me. And yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. So I didn't set out, yay, I want to become a manager. It was not my career goal or anything. And it became gradually, you know, I was a lead developer at first and responsible for the technical output of a team of 7 people. And then at some point it became formal people management also. And more and more people came. So I had to retreat from technology more and more because the people management time became more and more also. And yeah, it was a gradual transition. It wasn't so. This was 3 years ago. So I'm not in this transition right now anymore, but I still remember what it felt like, and I wrote about it also on my blog. So I think it's good to think these things through a lot, because right now my blog posts actually helped me remember what it was like at that time. Thanks for the question.
Thanks for the talk. You outlined items to talk about in one-on-one meetings. I would like to know about the topics that shouldn't be talked about in one-on-one meetings, especially the ones that you have come up based on your experience in these 3 years.
Topics that should not be talked about in one-on-one meetings. I think personal topics, if one of the 2 people involved is not comfortable with that particular topic, then it definitely shouldn't be talked about. If you ask somebody, hey, how was your meeting? How was your weekend? And all the answer was good, and then that's it, then I probably don't want to push further, dig deeper, because yeah, maybe they don't want to share, and which is totally fine. Apart from that, I think there's few things. What I would not do is talk negatively about other colleagues who are not in the room, because that's unfair to them, and it can hurt the climate very much. Because if you do that with one person, that person might think, okay, when I'm not in the room, what does he say about me? And it might also be something negative. I think those 2 are pretty safe to say they should be avoided. Apart from that, you can talk about a lot of things in one-on-ones. There's a question here. What about decision making in one-on-one meetings? Well, if the decision involves a lot of people, then maybe it's not the right setting. If it only involves the 2 who are present, then it's fine. Depends a bit. If you have other team leads or managers as employees, then one-on-ones are a good opportunity to talk through strategy and so on. Because decision making in large meetings is not always easy and not always effective. Sometimes you end up with a watered down decision. So it might actually be a good idea to make certain decisions in a one-on-one meeting. But of course, when the decision affects people who should have a say in the decision, then it's not the right thing.
Hi. You talked about how you basically look out for feedback on regular tasks, like you try to see your value when you introduce people to one another and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But as a developer, I guess we're used to have 360 feedback. So even one-on-ones is a way to have feedback from everyone. So how do you deal with the lack of feedback from the person above you on a regular basis?
How do I deal with lack of feedback from the person above me?
Yeah, do you have one-on-ones just with your team, or do you have like one-on-ones with your manager to talk about how you're doing as a manager?
Yes, I also have them with my manager. I would recommend you to ask for them if your manager doesn't have them with you. But yeah, the problem with 360-degree feedback is that it usually comes once or twice a year. And there's a good saying about feedback. It's like feedback is a bit like a yogurt. After a certain period, it should be discarded, not consumed anymore. So feedback should be fresh. And with 360-degree feedback, it's not the case often. So one-on-ones are a much better opportunity to provide feedback. And yes, I would also prefer my own manager to give me feedback in regular feedback, fresh feedback in one-on-one meetings. Thanks.
Hello. Thank you for the nice talk. I wanted, actually, you mentioned a lot of things about transitioning from developer to manager, but one of the fear is also the fear of missing out of technology. How do you deal with this? Especially because like maybe after when you are first becoming a manager, you are still in touch with the technology and everything. And then maybe you will only have to go to talks and so on, but you don't have that much experience that you can transfer to your team by time.
Sorry, where are you sitting? I'm a bit blinded. Okay, thanks for the question. Yeah, that's a big one. That's actually a big issue. Good question. You will, as you don't program every day, or you're not as involved in technology anymore, you will be surpassed by people who were always not as proficient as you. You will be people will surpass you, will become better than you, and that's an issue. And it's a stretch to still stay technical enough, stay technically relevant, so that you can join in technical discussions, talk about technical strategy at least. My recommendation is to block time to be technically involved. It could be code reviews. It could be pair programming with somebody. If you want to get hands-on and you can find the time, then I would definitely recommend to choose a project which will not block anybody. So it shouldn't be on the critical path. Good projects are improving the build process, or creating some tool that will make your team more productive. So if that gets delayed, it's not as bad. But the challenge is very real of losing your technical edge, and it's something that should not happen, because at some point you might have to go back to, if you switch the company or something, and you might end up in an individual contributor role sooner or later again. Maybe that's also what you want. So you should stay connected to technology at least. And I think the best way is by blocking time, consciously blocking time in your calendar. Or if you can find the time after work, then do side projects or something. But I would recommend to stay connected also to the technology in your company as best as you can.
Thank you. One last question.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. And I have the question, did you find yourself ever in a situation as a manager, you mentioned the role change, where you say, okay, now I'm going to be the manager that I always was looking up to and saying, okay, what does this guy do? Did you ever find yourself in a situation where you didn't do servant leading and switched to a manager role where you just manage everything because you're in a flow or something like that?
I'm not sure I understand the question fully. I always had, especially during the first year, I always had self-doubt. What should I do yeah, suddenly as a manager, you don't decide how to do things anymore, but you have to decide what to do exactly. And this mental switch was a difficult one for me. In my first year as a manager, I spent way too much time at my desk, for example, and didn't communicate enough. And communication is one of the most important things you do as a manager. So I got that feedback also after my first year, and it was very valuable feedback. Did I ever become the manager I wanted to? Well, yeah, I think after 1.5 years, it feels more natural. And once I had found my own style of management, things become, yeah, it feels more natural and it feels more comfortable. I was trying to hold myself up to high standards. I read a lot, so you could say, yeah, I was getting better and better, and arriving at a point where I could say, okay, I'm good in my role, and I think I can be proud of the work I do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, roughly. Thank you.
Can I improve it?
No, it was very confusing. I must confess. So,
okay.
So thank you, Tom, for your excellent talk, and thank you for your wonderful questions. Have a nice day. See you again.